Good afternoon, Tom. Today we're going to do a small talk on Maxim Tarannik's new book, Arcana Evolution, Navigating Consciousness Through the Tarot. What we'd like to present to his audience is how does the tarot work through your theory of MBT and
Oh,
consciousness?
okay. Well, we'll explain that, but as we explain that, we'll also explain how the I Ching works. And for all of those indigenous people out there who have cultures that go back thousands of years, how throwing the chicken bones works. These are all ways of divination, gathering information, particularly information out of the future. So look at all those. And we may even add in something about astrology there to see how that works as well. All of these kind of fit they're not all the same thing. They're all different, but they all have some similarities to how they work. They're tools of prognostication, tools of seeing the future. But, tarot does more than just see the future. It brings out things about people. It brings out issues and problems and connections, and it can do a lot of that. Well, so can the I Ching, and so can many of these methodologies. Oh, let me add tea leaves to that. Reading tea leaves. We'll throw that one in there too. Okay, all of them work with one similar key that is the key that makes them work, and that is uncertainty. Now, uncertainty with the chicken bones is obviously you throw them and it's how they land. Uncertainty with the I Ching is that you let a bunch of straws fall and it determines a hexagon, which then you read and interpret. And of course, with cards, with the tarot cards, you shuffle the deck. You mix up the cards. You don't lay them out in any particular way. You have to have uncertainty involved. With the tea leaves, you stir the tea leaves and they all swirl around, and it's how they, when the swirling stops, it's the patterns they make. You see, so there is uncertainty in all of those things, and it is this uncertainty that is the key. You have to have uncertainty in the tool that you're going to use for prognostication. All right, so that's the first thing. Now, I'm not real familiar with tarot cards, so I don't know all of the possibilities there. But the way it works is that you have a set of things that have some basic meaning. Okay, in the I Ching, that's a whole set of hexagrams, and they all have some specific kind of meaning to them. With the chicken bones, it's the various positions. There's probably four or five dozen different positions that have specific meaning, that symbolize certain things. You have to have a way to decode what you get. Okay, so it's either by where the bones land and the position they have, or it's by the hexagram and what various hexagrams show up when the reeds fall, or when you flip a coin to find out what your hexagram is. So you need not only uncertainty, but you need a set of things to interpret. And I'm sure the tarot cards are just like that. There's patterns, no doubt, in these cards, and you learn these patterns of what the patterns mean. And even in astrology, you have patterns. You have patterns. Oh, if this moon is in a certain phase next to this planet, which is in line with this other thing, then it means certain things. So there's patterns among the heavenly bodies. It's not just that, oh, this is your birthday and this is your sun side, so you're this kind of person. That's pretty crude astrology. A good astrologer gets into a lot more fine detail than that and has to interpret the patterns that they find. And the patterns in astrology also have to do with your birthday. And that just is one more variable in the mix. So the way that this works then is the person doing it is very key to it too. The person doing it can't just be anybody. If I just walked up and I've never handled a deck of tarot cards, and if I just walked up and grabbed the cards and shuffled them around, it probably wouldn't mean too much. Or if you just got somebody off the street, hey, you over there, come over here and shuffle these cards out and interpret what they mean. Well, they wouldn't be able to do that very well, and they wouldn't do anything that was very meaningful. So the other active ingredient that you have to have besides uncertainty, that's one. The other one is a set of symbols and patterns that mean something, that's two. And three, you have to have a person who's doing it who can tune in to the larger consciousness system. You need a system that can tune in to the databases, can tune in to the larger conscious system. Could be a voice. The system can talk to you. The system can give you pictures. It can give you all sorts of things. But it has to be a person that has their intuitive channel developed to the point that they can get information intuitively. So those are all the active ingredients. You need uncertainty. You need some kind of patterns and symbols that you can interpret. Okay, you need a person who has an intuitive capability developed. Those are the active ingredients.
Well, I think the interesting thing about the tarot is that it has been around since the Middle Ages. So you've got a consciousness that's been focused in on these particular attributes of these cards. So that has developed over 1,000 years. Is there something in and also, within the other ways interpreting information that you've mentioned? Is there a collective that assists with that?
Yeah, well, there is, but it's probably a minor player. There is a collective because all those people who see themselves as people who read tarot cards, they've studied it, they've practiced, they've gotten their intuitive connection and whatever. That forms a collective consciousness. That forms a group, and within that collective consciousness, you connect with all the people who not only do this, but who have done this. It's all part of it's part of the history of this collective consciousness. So even if those people are long dead who have done it since the Middle Ages, then still that collective consciousness carries some of that understanding. So yes, anytime you have a group of people who see themselves as tarot card readers, say, then there's a collective consciousness to go with that. And you can, what it does probably more than anything, it probably improves your intuitive connection. That belonging to that group. And you don't belong to it just because you say, I want to belong. You belong to it by being a practitioner. You belong to it by doing it. And the longer and more serious you are in doing it, well, then the deeper you're connected to that collective consciousness. So I think mostly what that collective consciousness does, it doesn't give you an answer. It doesn't really tell you how to interpret it, but it probably does enhance your intuitive connection. That because once you get kind of connected to that consciousness, well, all those people had this intuitive connection. So that's, now you can come with your intuitive connection already fairly well developed. That's fine. But making it into that connection that's best for, a particular thing, whether it's chicken bones or tarot or tea leaves, that takes experience. You don't read a book and then say, okay, I read the book on tarot, so now I'm a seasoned practitioner, No, you get there for doing it over years. And actually, if you've been doing it for decades, you're much better at it. If you've only been doing it for 1 decade, you're not as good at it as you're going to get if you keep doing it.
Now, would someone who was a beginner but had some intuitive ability or that desire to connect to this information, would they be an advantage? Would they be at an advantage
Sure, sure
for
they've
this
been,
collective consciousness
yeah,
to learn
sure.
quicker and get this
Yeah, right.
information?
Yeah, they'd be at an advantage. So if you already have a well-developed intuitive mind, then it'll take you a lot less time to developing your tarot mind, or your chicken bone mind, or your tea leaf mind, whatever. But those things all take practice. And again, it's you in this collective consciousness and doing things. You get feedback. You get little subtle, different kinds of feelings that trigger different kinds of interpretations. And all of that subtlety requires time to sort all that out. So you get better at it as you practice. It's a thing that it's not something you read about and then instantly are good at. Like you can study a math book and you can be really good at calculus without practicing it. Just reading about it and studying it can make you very good at it. But it's not like that on the intuitive side. That's on the intellectual side. The intellectual side, you can study things and get good at them just by your intellect. On the intuitive side, you got to get in the seat. You got to drive that experience and get in the seat, and you got to do it many times before you make all the subtle connections that need to be made. And most of those subtle connections are all on the intuitive. They all come at an intuitive side. They're not just because these cars showed themselves this way. That's to be interpreted based on the individual, based on the time, the circumstances, and based on that intuitive channel that you've got, you can interpret it. You
Now,
see,
Tom, from your
it,
theory of information as reality, reality equals information, it's easy to translate that into how you would receive this information from the tarot. Could you explain it from your theory and from the consciousness point of view, how that
well,
information is?
well, as I said, that information is intuitive. Now, intuitive information is not rational. It's not like information you get in your intellect. In your intellect, the information is logical. It all comes this because of that and that because of the other thing, and you piece this logic together. In prognosticating, you just know. It's not a logical thing that you put together things. It's just that you know. And that's actually the skill that builds with time, is this knowing skill. When you start out, you are using your intellect more. Oh, okay, I got this card and that card, and in this sequence and in that pattern for this person, that means such and such because you studied it. All right, good. So that is intellectual, and you can put that together intellectually. But that doesn't make you a good tarot card reader. It just makes you a tarot card reader that's beginning. You learn all the basics. You have to learn the basic stuff. It's the same if you're doing, the I Ching. There's certain things you have to understand, symbols and what things mean. And it's the same with, say, well, here, this moon's here, these planets are there. And it's not just a matter of getting the information and intellectually applying the rules and coming out with a result. You can do that. Matter of fact, astrology is a really good example because the rules for astrology are mostly well known. There's a lot of things been published on it. That also is very old. Well, the chicken bones go back probably a lot longer in either one of those. The chicken bones probably are another 5,000 years older than astrology and tarot. But in any case, astrology is a good one because the rules are pretty well known. They've been written down. Lots of people have written about astrology. So they program computers to do astrology by the rules. And you'll see those horoscopes will be in papers and things, and it's the computer that does that. So it's easy. All it does is at any particular hour of any particular day, all you have to do is put in your birthday and bingo, the computer will give you a horoscope. Or you can publish it in a paper and say, everybody born on this day, here's your horoscope. So that's just obeying the rules. Now, computers are really, really good at obeying rules. That's what they do. They're much better at it than people. So they can compute the positions of the heavenly bodies and of the moons. They can compute to 20 decimal places if they want to. They can compute everything out much more precisely and exactly and follow those rules as precisely and exactly as, better than people. And everybody knows that a computer is a kind of a, astrologer. They're not really good astrologers. The computers are okay, and they can get some good hits sometimes. But for the most part, if you go to a computer for a horoscope reading, you're getting plain vanilla. You're not getting the kind of thing you could get with a gifted reader, because the computer can't do what the gifted person does, and that's use its intuition. The computer doesn't have that intuitive channel to pull together all the strands of things that are not only, that aren't known here in the physical world. These are things that really come out of the knowledge bases and understanding in the non-physical world. So yes, there are rules, and yes, you can start your practice of any of these things just by reading about them and following the rules. But that'll only make you a very mediocre practitioner. It's the other stuff that makes you a good practitioner. Okay, so that's probably worth saying, because there's a big difference between those people who are really good and those people who just know how to apply the rules of the trade. There's a big difference between those. And how do you develop that difference? By doing it and being aware and developing your intuitive side, learning how to collect that information. It just comes to you. You have to be open. You can't let your intellect get in the way. You have to put your mind in a space that's open and ready for information, and then let that flow. Now, okay, so how does it, I still haven't told you how it works, but we are getting all the pieces together. Okay, so now we have tarot, let's say, or any of these others, and the system, the larger consciousness system, is an involved system. It's not just out there. It's not a big machine that makes reality. It's not a big reality-making machine. It is that, but that's not all it is. It's aware. It's conscious. The consciousness system is conscious, and it has a purpose. Its purpose is to survive. It does that by evolving in a positive direction. That positive direction is defined as the direction of low entropy. Okay, now maybe that's a little sciencey there, but basically for social systems, like consciousness is a social system of all the pieces of things that are conscious, evolving toward low entropy is the same as evolving toward being caring, being kind, being helpful. It's the love side. That's how the larger conscious system is evolving. Okay, now we're sub parts of it. We're pieces of it, just subsets of this larger conscious system, and that's what we are. Not we, our body, but we, our consciousness. Our body is a virtual body in a virtual reality, but I'm not going to talk about that too much. I'm just differentiating the things here. So think of us as a piece of consciousness. Okay, now we can basically do all the things that the larger conscious system can do, but only in a small way. It does these, it's got a lot more capacity than we have, but we basically can do the same sort of things, just in our own small way that we do that. All right, well, we're here also to evolve the quality of our consciousness toward a lower entropy consciousness. That means we're here to learn how to care and be helpful and, ask, what can I do and how can I help? Not what's in it for me. See, we're here to give, to love and care. And the opposite end of that is fear. It's fearful. It's not love versus hate. It's love versus fear. Hate is just a creation of fear. Fear is the main thing. All right. So once we establish that, then we are parts of the system. As we evolve, the system evolves because we're parts of it. So if I evolve my little part, well, the whole system evolves just a little bit because I evolve my part. So the system wants us to succeed, wants people to succeed. And it needs ways to interact with people. It has to interact with people in ways that kind of mask the fact that it's interacting with people. It can't just pop up something in your face and give you a monologue of what you need to do to grow up. It doesn't work like that. You have to grow up from the inside out. You have free will. You have to grow up by the choices you make. So it can use these games of uncertainty in order to give us a message, in order for us to see maybe what's coming, the things we're doing wrong, the way we need to change, how we should grow, how we should understand something, what we should be aware of, things that should concern us. So it would like us to do better. It would like us to not be so full of fear and to become love. And it's willing to help us. And these tools I'm talking about that allow this prognostication, it uses those to help us see where we're going. What kind of life are we making for ourselves? What kind of choices we have and what those choices might mean. Help us make better choices. And that's what you get from all of these things. Whether you're getting the tea leaves read or tarot cards or consulting the I Ching, going to an astrologer, you're hoping to get some information that helps you make better choices. Right? That's the whole point. All right, well, the system says, hey, I'd like you to make better choices because I want you to evolve. So I'll play. The system wants to play in that game. And because there's uncertainty, you shuffle the deck, then the system can make those cards come out in any order it wants to in order to produce the meaning that you need to have to help you make better choices. You see? So actually, the larger consciousness system is like a co-conspirator in these games of chance that people play to do prognostication. It can make those chicken bones fall in a particular way to give whoever is asking to know the future some information that will help them make better choices, help them understand something, give them some idea of a bigger picture. So that's kind of the last ingredient that makes this work is the larger consciousness system. And it does that quite purposefully. Now, there's all levels of this that can take place. Sometimes you could have a practitioner of any of these things just doing it, being intuitive, getting data out of the databases, understanding the person. You get data from that person too, your client. You pick up data from your client, data that you pick up intuitively from your client. It's not data that's physical, it's in the physical world. This is data in the non-physical world you get intuitively. All right, so here's your client. So you kind of know where your client's issues are. And you get data from the larger conscious system about your client, about his health, about what he's doing, what he's thinking, what his issues are, and where he's going. And all of that kind of data comes. And you get data not only out of the databases, but from the future probable database. That's a particular database that just has everything that can happen and the probability that it will happen. And that database is in flux all the time. It's not just fixed. It changes based on the choices we make, based on our intent. We can change it. That's how mental healing works. We can modify the probabilities within this probable future database. So if you can make it more likely, if you can raise the probabilities that somebody will get better instead of worse, well, then they're more likely to get better. So all of that information is at the fingertips of these practitioners who have been practicing enough that they automatically gather all the pertinent information from the client, even from the people that are with the client. Again, this is stuff they're not just reading the client's body language, they're getting stuff that's non-physical about the client's situation, about the client's issues, about the choices that the client has. They get that relative to the cards they see. You see, because now they're dealing out these cards, and because they shuffled the deck, the system can make those cards come out in any order it wants, because nobody knows what the next card's going to be when you turn it up. So the system can make those cards come out and basically say whatever needs to be said. So the system's really talking to the practitioner. Okay, practitioner, let's go. You deal the cards, and I'll make the cards say something to you that will help you understand the person's problem, and the future probabilities around that person and their problem. So that's what you do. The cards also help the practitioner tune in on what they need to tune into. You see, so the practitioner sees the cards, and that helps them tune to the information they're getting. Now they can just do that and tell their client whatever they get. Or if it's a more significant issue here where that client really needs some kind of special prodding for something, right? The system could put that idea right into the practitioner's mind. The system could say, oh yeah, no, by the way, tell them to stop beating up their cousin George. And you may get little bits and pieces that come across that are very specific for that person. It's just little flashes that'll come across. So it works in multiple ways. It always doesn't just work the same way. Sometimes it's a person of interest. Your client is a person of interest to the larger conscious system. Well, then you're going to get a whole lot more information. It's going to be richer, and you may get these little things that just pop into your mind to say. Or it may be somebody who is not a person of interest. They're just a person. And then you get the kind of things you get out of the system and out of the databases. And there's not very much that's coming directly from the larger conscious system, other than all this data exists within the larger conscious system. So sometimes the system's hand is a stronger hand in the game, and sometimes it's not a very strong hand in the game. And that just depends on the situation. The strong hand is there when it needs to be. So even the practitioner knows that every time is different. Every time is different, and you have to just be open to seeing how this particular time, when this client walks up and says, all right, toss the bones for me, I want to know, is this a good day to invest in pork bellies or not? Throw the bones. And every time's different because every client's different. And what they get depends in some measure on that client. That client's a live part of the mix. That's part of there's this big information exchange going on, and it's between the practitioner who's putting out the tarot cards, the client who is giving them lots of information and stuff, the larger conscious system that's providing the information, and all these databases and things that are providing information. So there's this cloud of different sources of information that all have to coalesce into a feeling and an attitude and a story that the practitioner gets from that. And all of that is very subtle. That's why it takes a lot of practice to get that, because that you just have to be open, you have to collect, you have to know what to let go, what's important, what isn't. You pull it together and it tells you something. And you get to be able to do that with lots and lots of practice. So that's basically how all of those things work. It's also why that if all you do is know the rules, well, I can read a book on tarot, I suspect, and it'll tell me how to interpret all, each card and each kind of thing, and and I can do that, but I won't be very good. I'll be a very mediocre to poor reader of the tarot.
I wonder if that intent is important. The intent to help others. If you have a high quality intent to help somebody, that probably adds to your ability to intuit information, perhaps.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. If you are sitting there and you are not in a good space, oh, this is my last client, I can't wait for them to be gone, and you have that kind of an attitude, then you're not going to do very well. You have to enter into this energy exchange, this information exchange with the client. You can do that much better if you really care about the result and about the client. And you do that by trying to be helpful. You're not doing it just for the money. If the only reason you're doing this is because of the money, you'd probably never be very good at it. You can still do it, and you might learn to be a little good at it, but you're not going to be really good at it. You have to do it because you're in the moment connecting, gathering this information, and helping people, giving them insights. And that will make you, that kind of an attitude will be able to develop into a much better practitioner. If your whole attitude is, I'm going to do this to make money, your mind will not be in the right space to get all that data and make sense of it. Your intellect, you'll be doing it mostly through your intellect, and doing it through your intellect is just like a computer being, tossing out horoscopes. Interesting, perhaps, but not really all that meaningful. Another thing that I can add here to maybe help the practitioners and other people who aren't practitioners kind of understand how this works is that not only do you have to practice, but the practice has to be within the specific modality that you're using. In other words, if you work a tarot modality and you get good at that, so you're getting data from the individual, from the databases, you're moving all this around and it's pulling together into stories, and you kind of get what it is you need to tell this person, then it's not that easy for you just to go over and read tea leaves or do the I Ching. Yes, you have some of the basic requirements, but if you're going to be an astrologer or a tea leaf reader or an I Ching interpreter, you're probably going to spend another 4 or 5 years getting good at that because it's a little different. So yes, only 4 or 5 years, not 4 or 5 decades. You see, so well, I did say that if you have the right stuff, the right attitude, the right intuitive things, it makes it easier, but it doesn't make it easy. It doesn't make it simple. So I wanted to make that point. It's not like, oh, I got the right attitude. Gee, I do this in a week. No, you won't do that. It's going to take years to hone your skills at doing this. And as you spend those years, you will develop more caring, more connections with people. You will tend to grow up. It's a growing thing. So you find that the people who really do these things are usually very nice people, because in order to do them well, you do have to grow up. Because if your mind is full of fear and you're self-centered, you will not be able to do these things very well. So people who are really good at this, for the most part, are really nice people, really good people. Now, there's always going to be people who will be who will pretend to be good at it, and they really aren't. That's the way it is. That's true whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an Indian chief. No matter what you're in, there's going to be people who are going to pretend that they really, are good at it, and they're not. So that's just normal. That's life. It's like that in everything. So I just wanted to point that out, that yes, it does make it a little easier, and you could shift from one modality to another, but you're still going to have to put in years to fine tune the kind of information you get, how you interpret that information by the symbols you're using, because tarot symbols are totally different than astrology symbols, are totally different than bone and tea leaf symbols. So it'll take time, because you get to the point that all those symbols just speak to you. You get to a point where you and the symbology also flow together, and that takes some time. That builds confidence in your intuitive side, to where you and that set of things you use, be they tarot cards or tea leaves or chicken bones, you have to develop a relationship with those tools. And anybody who uses tools is like that. If you're a carpenter, and if you're a carpenter, and every hammer is not just a hammer, you've got your own hammer. And that own hammer and you are so much more effective together than just somebody says, hey, I need a hammer here. Yeah, use mine. It's different. You get to know your tools. You get to use your tools, and you prefer your tools over anybody else's. So getting adapted in that space and getting adapted with your tools is a very important part of the process. And yes, you can more easily learn a different modality, but it's still going to take you some years. And in those years, you have to practice it.
Well, that
And
makes a lot of
practice it and
sense
practice it.
because they each have a language of their own, and it's like learning another language.
Mhm.
You may
Yes.
be proficient in learning languages, but they each have their own. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. It's like learning it's not just learning a language, it is a language. The tea leaves, the tarot cards, all of those things. It is a language in itself, but it's not a spoken language. It's a language of sorting through 5 or 6 different sources of information and coming up with something that's going to be helpful to your client. That's it's its own skill, and the only way to get that skill is to practice and do it, and to have the right attitude in your mind, that you want to be able to help people, that you want to be part of people's solutions. And if you have that in mind, that's also an important part of it. If you're doing it for some other reason, you're doing it just because you do it, or because of the money you make, or something else, or because it looks cool, well, you'll never be very good at it. The people who are really good at it do it because of the advantages they can give others a kind of a deeper vision into themselves and into their situation and into the things they're creating. And they don't even know they're creating, but you can give them some insight that would be helpful to them. And you do that, and when your client gets it, and they do use it, to good advantage, and to grow and to see things that are better, makes you feel good. That's why you do it. That's the reward you get for doing it, is that it's helpful. Now, if you saw your client and they just used it to take advantage of people or something like that, you wouldn't want to talk to that client much anymore. You'd want to do something else. And if you do it for those kinds of reasons, to help people take advantage of others, eventually you won't be very good at it again. You'll lose your skills. If you develop a lot of skills and then you use it for high entropy things rather than low entropy things, those skills will begin to erode. And eventually your own ego and your own fears will destroy your ability. You'll get crankier and crankier and nastier and meaner, and life will get less and less pleasant. You'll have less happiness. You won't feel satisfaction. All of that stuff will start to eat away at your abilities. So
That's
it's how you use the tool too. It's not just using the tool, but it's the way with which you use the tool. And that's true again, even of a carpenter. If a carpenter really loves his work and loves his business, he will make things that are so much better quality than the carpenter who is just working by the hour and pounds nails because that's what he's been paid to do. There's a difference. You can feel, the love that's put into the product is an important part of the result. And that's true in anything, but it's particularly true in these things where it determines, your ability to do it is primarily about your intuitive side. And that intuitive side isn't very much based on your motivations, your intents. Why are you doing this? And the people who've been doing it a long time and are very good at it, like I say, you'll find they're very nice people. They tend to be people who care and who have talent and who like to help people. So,
Thank you, Tom. That's very clear, a very clear viewpoint of how you view these various tools for accessing information. And I hope that's helpful to Maxim. Thank you.
I and MBT Events hope you liked this video. We will continue to post videos for free on my YouTube channel, but please understand, these videos are expensive to produce. They represent many thousands of hours of production and editing, as well as all the necessary audiovisual equipment, computers, and software. If you find something of significant value in our videos, please consider supporting their production through our Patreon account or through a one-time donation. It would be very much appreciated. The links are in the description below. Thank you.